Welcome, everyone, to the Kansas Authors Club January 2026 meeting. We're excited to talk with our 2025 Book Award winners. We have 5 of the 7 here, and I am going to start by, rather than introducing each of the panelists necessarily, I want to start by telling you about the winning books. So that's going to be my introduction to you all, is showing the books. And I'm going to do that by going to the website, because that will help everyone see where they can find things on the website. Can you all see the page that says The Last Rancher right now? All right. So I'm going to start by talking about the winners from 2025. The Bertha, J. Donald and Bertha Coffin Memorial Award in 2025 was for fiction given to The Last Rancher by Robert Rebein. Judge Cindy Roop said, "This is the sort of book to take to appointments, not minding at all if you get a few minutes of reading in a waiting room. From the start, it was the language that attracted me." Author Robert Rebein warns us, "This place is going to have its claws in you. From the suburbs of Leeward and the serenity of the home place to the dusty river roads of Dodge City, I felt I knew each place. I wanted to stand with Annie, cup of coffee in hand, on the porch of the home place and see the fields of grazing cattle and horses while listening to the croaking bullfrogs and bellowing calves. The places became so real that I found myself wanting to Google the streets and restaurants of Dodge City, but I didn't have to." So that was our fiction award winner. We also give a nonfiction book award for the Coffin Award, and this year's nonfiction was The 11 Directions of Kansas by Jim Gilkeson. Jim, it should be noted, this is the second year in a row that he has won the Coffin Award for nonfiction. And Judge Kim Stanley said about his book, "With a clear trajectory and an effective ending, Gilkeson introduces a wide variety of characters and experiences. One of the virtues of the book is frequent surprise. Another virtue is humor. Each piece is well planned. Gilkeson laughs at himself and makes gentle fun of others who are generally depicted sympathetically. The book is both fun and thought-provoking." All right, our next award is the Nelson Poetry Book, which this year was won by Denise Lowe with House of Grace, House of Blood. Judge Allison Hicks said, "A stunning work of poetic witness and imagination. Lowe's poetry sings out of documentary text, oral histories, family stories, and personal interrogation and reflection, illuminating the 1782 massacre by renegade Western Pennsylvania militia of native Lenape, including women and children, converted to the pacifist Moravian faith in Nantucket, Ohio." I'm sorry, Denise, I should have asked how to pronounce
That's okay.
which literally means house or hut of grace. And if you're looking at the website, you'll notice that our finalists are also listed below here. The next book award is the Martin, Kansas History Book Award. And where did sorry, I've lost track of my mouse. This is just the time to have your computer freeze up. Sorry, guys. All right, I may just have to read about it. Todd could not be with us today. He's his winner for the Martin Kansas History Book Award is Like What You Do, The Memoirs of Dr. Walt Menninger by Todd Fertig with Walt Menninger as co-writer. Keith Wondra said Todd Fertig's Like What You Do is a well-written book on the life of one of America's premier psychologists. With Fertig, Mr. Menninger's writing gives a great detail on the establishment of the Menninger Foundation, a Topeka landmark for 84 years. I recommend the book to anyone who wants to learn about the advancement of American psychiatry. All right, let's try this again for Abby's book. I don't know why this is giving me such trouble all of a sudden.
It's a computer.
It's a computer. And it knows it has an audience. Oh my goodness. Anyway, computer lifting it up. No, it's all me. Okay. Okay, there we go. Abby's book, Ghost Town Treasure Hunt by Abbi Lee. And the judge for this was Deb Rundis. She said, a fun book that gives kids a chance to go on a treasure hunt through geocaching. This is a story of friendship and appreciating adventure. And finally, we have the It Looks Like a Million Book Design Award. We have two categories now in this award. The winner went to The Rhino Keeper by Jillian Forsberg, who was also busy and could not join us today, but Judge Rosalie Kringer said the cover of The Rhino Keeper is visually striking and manages to balance graphics and imagery that are thematically appropriate to the tone, topic, and time period of the book with current popular aesthetic trends in the industry. It's worth noting that Jillian's book was also a finalist for the Coffin Award. And then in the children's category, we have this very fun Pirate Chickens Under Attack by Ashley Donegan. Rosalie said, Pirate Chickens Under Attack incorporates charming illustrations and small but effective touches throughout. The font is clean and easy to read, and choosing to display the onomatopoeia in red is a simple choice that adds big impact, helping young readers to start to understand the process of differentiating stressed words and sounds. The illustrations are charming, and the addition of small pictures in the corners of the text-focused pages supplements the visual storytelling without being overly distracting. And this was also a finalist in the Children's Book Award. So that's where it's going to drive me crazy. I need to just stop sharing so that this is no longer a problem. Okay. All right, so now we are ready to talk to our panelists. And we just have 3 questions here. They're all going to get a chance to answer, and then we should have some time for questions and answers at the end. So the first question, let's talk about the genesis of your books. Tell us about the writing process from the first time you got the inspiration for the book until it was published. And I'm going to try to switch up the order each time, but I thought we'd start with Robert Rebein.
Okay, thanks and welcome everybody. It's really a lot of fun to be here and see all of your faces. My book has a very long history, and genesis probably is not surprising for a novel. I was doing a month-long writers retreat at the Malay Colony in upstate New York in May of 2000, and I was there to finish one book and start another, and I got down to the last 10 days and was very dissatisfied with my progress. And I decided I wanted to do something completely different. And so I took out a notebook and I just started filling it with ideas for a novel. And the ideas, the characters, all of them that came together became my novel, The Last Rancher. I didn't work on it for 25 years. I worked on it on and off and published other books in the middle. But I'll tell you a couple of things I did do. I filled notebooks, probably 10 kind of notebooks like this with ideas for the book before I ever sat down to write a draft. Because I know that some people like to start without knowing where something is going to go. That's really not the kind of writer I am. I really would like to know where I'm headed. So I feel I spent some time writing in notebooks, and then I was in 2005. I had a semester off from teaching. I'm a teacher at college level, and I did. And again, the same thing happened to me. I felt really dissatisfied with how I was using this precious time, and so I decided to attempt the first draft of the novel. And to keep myself from getting bogged down, I did it on a manual typewriter, if you can believe that. I wrote 1,000 words a day, 6 days a week for about 4.5 months, and I produced an entire typescript of a version of The Last Rancher. It was not. There were crazy things in there that never became part of the book itself. Again, I set it aside, and then after Headlights on the Prairie was published in 2018, I really started working on this book as my full-time project. And I worked on it, for about 5 years. And during that time, I really got a lot of feedback from a lot of people. All told, I want to say maybe I did 5 drafts. The last thing I'll say about it is I had a lot of fun writing this book. I had a previous book that I had turned into as kind of a self-torture, and I decided that I would never do that again, that anything I wrote after that was going to be fun. And I really had fun writing this book.
Glad to hear it. We had fun reading this book. Um, how about Jim Gilkeson? Talk about the genesis of your book.
Okay. Thanks, Tracy, and thanks to everybody here. Genesis of this, I think as much as anything else, I'm not going to name any names, but Denise um, is a little bit responsible for some of the way this book started. It's a bunch of short stories, and one thing that most of them have in common is that when Denise uh, worked as an editor on my memoir, this is what she cut out. And I'm so glad she did. The whole memoir was way overweight, so this was a weight loss program. And I think the bottom line is that encouraged me to allow each of those pieces to bloom into their own stories. So they stand on their own instead of being diversions from the narrative of the memoir. And so that's really, to my mind, when this became a book as opposed to just a collection of stories that didn't have any relation to each other. So there, a lot of them are autofiction. Not, no, that's not the right word. They were they were short stories that are based on things in my autobiography for the most part, with a whole admixture of imagination. And that's what the title story is about um, in the 11 directions, the 11th direction being imagination. So that's where I would say that came from. I'd say another touchstone for me was the work of Maxine Hong Kingston, whose stories I really love because they take autobiography and blend it with this incredibly luminous imagination of hers. And that's been an inspiration for me. So those are two of the touchstones, I think, for this question here of where the book come from. Yeah. Hmm. Thank you.
Good job in cutting it, Denise. You ended up with 2 award-winning books. Very good. Um, Abby Lee.
Hello. Um, Well, the inspiration, I guess I can start there with Ghost Town Treasure Hunt, actually came a from Forrest Fenn. It was, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Forrest Fenn, but he was a wealthy art collector. And back in 2010, he actually hid a real treasure chest in the Rocky Mountains. And it had gold and other valuables for that. I think it totaled up to about $1 million. He published his memoir, and in the memoir had a poem with lots of clues. And anyway, I heard about this early on in my teaching career, and it was just kind of a fun, real life treasure hunt story that was happening. So that it kind of just stuck with me. And then a little bit later, I learned about geocaching and going out and doing like real life treasure hunting, but with little like canisters where there are millions and millions of them, and they give you the GPS coordinates, so not as hard as treasure hunting. But those two things just kind of kept circling in my mind, and I was playing with both of them, trying to find the real life treasure. I mean, that was fun just to try and decipher that. And then geocaching. And eventually I started getting the idea of what would happen if a geocache hunt actually led to a real treasure hunt. And I have always been around like young students, whether I worked at the Ronald McDonald House or I was teaching high school or middle school. And so it fit really well to write for kids. Around the same time I was having this inspiration kind of click together, there was a writing contest. It was through Twitter at the time, and it was the Kidlit Fall Writing Frenzy by Caitlin Sanchez. She does it every fall, and she has a spring one as well. And she asked for people to do a mood piece, and you could pick a picture. And I saw this picture of like a broken down shack. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is spooky, but not like real spooky because I can't do horror or anything like that. And so I wrote that little mood piece, and it was really well received. At the time, I was writing picture books. And so I was doing all these submissions for picture books, and I had agents and editors telling me, this is good, but you kind of have more of a middle grade voice. So I was like, all right, well, I'll take the mood piece and that inspiration and just kind of start writing a novel. Let's see if that goes anywhere. It took me a little over 2 years to write the full novel. I queried it to over 100 literary agents. All of them rejected it. I had some really nice feedback from a lot of them, and got close a few times. And so I switched gears and I decided to send it to small publishing houses instead. And it wasn't long before my publisher, Chicken Scratch Books, saw the potential in it and picked it up. And then edits, revisions took about a year and a half before it came out and was published into a book, October of 2024. So that is how Ghost Town Treasure Hunt came to be.
Lots of endurance to get a book published. Very good. Now let's hear from Ashley Donegan.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm not really I don't consider myself a writer, or I'm not a teacher or anything. I'm just a mom who I like to write when I was younger, and I have a daughter, and she's super creative, and so as a project sort of for us to do together, a creative endeavor, we started writing children's books just kind of for the fun of it. And so in 2020, we got chickens for the first time, and it's been a learning experience to have chickens here in Kansas. There's many predators, and so we have learned a lot. And we name them all, and they all have different personalities. And so the book kind of started, the idea for the book, several years ago, because we were in our barn and one of our chickens had one leg, and my daughter named her Peg, and the other chicken had one eye. And so I was kind of like, hey, it's kind of like we have a bunch of pirates out here in the barn. And then we were like, yeah, that'd be a cute story for a children's books. And so that's sort of how it evolved. And I absolutely loved reading to my daughter when she was little. It's my favorite time ever. And so I just wanted to jump in and see what we could do. And so that's how it got started. And so it's my second book. We have a bunch more to come. So yeah, that's how it started.
Okay, I'm going to say, Ashley, no one can say they're just a mom because mom is everything. You wear
Well,
all the badges.
true.
Um, and
Very true.
if you have not had a chance to show this book to your kids, it is truly delightful. Don't let Ashley like sound like it's no big deal because I have read a
Oh,
lot of children's books and this one surprised me and I really I was very pleased with it. I enjoyed it. And
thank you.
obviously our judge did too. It was a finalist also for the children's book. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
very good work. Um,
Thanks.
let's hear from Denise Lowe.
Well, I wish I had chickens. That's great, Ashley. I can't, now I know what it really takes to be a writer. That's a wonderful story. I am grateful. I've been writing this book all my life. And I just want to credit the Kansas school system that is excellent. I went K through 12 in Emporia, Kansas. I was mentored, I was encouraged, I was given good grammar. And when I started writing poetry, I was keeping journals, and some poor English teacher put up with me. Um, so through the years, I've been grateful to this background and communities like the Kansas Authors Club, and I really appreciate this award. Um, I wrote a memoir about reconnecting with my Lenape, Muncie, Mohegan, or Delaware Indian family ties through my grandfather. When my parents died, they always told us we were German, and I am blonde, and I inherited a box of photographs, and these were all dark-skinned people with black hair and brown eyes, and then my brother said, "Oh yeah, grandfather Pop was Indian," so that resulted in a memoir from the University of Nebraska Press, and my editor there made me take out about a third of it, Jim. And that third included this really wrenching story that was so emotional that poetry seemed the right container for it. And so that historic incident, the Gnadenhutten massacre, and Jim's the one who can pronounce that as a German speaker. It was just this incredibly wrenching story that I felt had to be told, but not just factually. And there were no living survivors, of course, because this was 1782. So, anyway, this found its way into poetry. And I never expected to get it published because, it was purely my own, I had to write it. And then by serendipity, I've had a breakfast at a conference with poetry acquisitions poetry editor at the University of Arizona Press, and she loved it, and I worked with her. So that's the quick version.
Very good. Quick version to the book. All these books, I know a lot of heart and soul and sweat, and I'm sure a few tears went into them. Thank you for persevering and getting these wonderful books to us. Our next question. Writing is often seen as a solitary process, but publishing a book is rarely a task that is completed alone. Talk about how you involved others in the process. For instance, when did you begin to share this project with your readers? Or who did you recruit for expert advice on making your manuscript the best it could be? Abbi, would you like to start on this one?
Sure. Honestly, critique partners critique group was the biggest help for me when I was first writing this book. And they really they helped encourage, they helped polish it enough where I felt comfortable sending it to agents and publishers. And I had a picture book critique group and a middle grade critique book or critique group at this time. And so they were both really helpful in different ways. And honestly, probably helped me get it finished and written completely because I had that accountability piece. Once the book was sold and my editor decided she wanted a trilogy, then I've mainly worked with my editor. Just there's been a lot of turnaround time, like quick turnaround time. Book 2 was written in 4 months, and she asked if I could do it. I was like, I don't know. I guess we're going to find out together because I had 2 years to write the one before. So I didn't really have time to get it to critique partners. And so during this trilogy, it's been very much with my editor. But we've been able to discuss outlines for the second and third books before I started writing, and that helped cut down a lot of revision time. I think Robert mentioned he's very much an outliner, and so am I. I have to outline. I got to know where I'm going. And then since it's traditionally published, the publishing house and the team that works there, they take care of the formatting, the cover design, chapter illustrations, all of that. So while they're doing that, I'm able to start writing the next story. But once the trilogy is done, I will actually have a book that's not under contract. It's totally different, doesn't even involve geocaching and treasure hunting and all of that. But once I start getting into that book again, then I'll go back to critique groups because now I'll be able to really dive into that and edit their stories so they can edit mine. And yeah, so honestly, critique groups have been the biggest help getting my books where they needed to be and support and all of that. So.
And I'm just curious, Ashley, are most of your critique groups online groups or people you meet locally?
Mine were all online. And so it was people I met through a mentorship on Twitter, like years ago when it was very author friendly, lots of groups. And then just through other author connections is where I met my second middle grade critique group. So it's been all online so far.
Thank you. Ashley?
Yeah, so I would say my daughter is, I don't know, children are very honest. So since she helped me create the book and she did all the artwork in the story, I kind of did things backwards. I'm not a timeline person like the other people were saying. I'm kind of a creative, like my thoughts are all over the place. So we did it with that my daughter drew the pictures first and then I would write around that. Which is probably totally backwards, but that's just how we do it. And so my daughter would be very honest, would be like, Mom, I hate this. That's stupid. Or what, she's like, no, take that out. Absolutely not. And she's only 10. I think she was about 8 at the time. So they're very honest. And then also my husband, he is a big help. He'd give me feedback and he was very helpful for that. My sister, anyone I could get to read it because everybody has a different perspective. So I would have them, read it, some teachers and, friends, family, things like that. And then once I got it all gathered, because I pretty much we did the art, the writing, the cover design, everything we did ourselves, which is also probably not typical, but it's how we did it. And then I did have an editor look at it at the end, and she was very helpful to kind of get it all kind of more uniform and everything and really streamlined. So that was our process.
It takes a village. I love that your daughter had feedback. It'll be interesting to see where she goes. Linda says you have chickens on your sweaters. Oh, you do. Wonderful.
That's great.
Yep, I'm a crazy chicken lady.
Very good. All right, Robert, tell us about your helpers.
Yeah, so it's been interesting with this book because I'm in a writers group that meets twice a month. So we meet every other week, and we got some very simple rules. One of our rules is that everybody has to submit something every time. Be anything. It can be anything. It can be a page, whatever. And then everybody has to respond to everything that everyone else submitted every time. So, when I write a novel, though, I don't want to invite people into too much of an incomplete world too early. And so I want to get a full draft of the whole thing before, and then I begin sharing it. I just looked at the acknowledgments in my book, and there are 15 people who I know for a fact read the book from beginning to end. Two of them, including Tracy, read it more than once from start to finish. So I relied on a lot of people, but one thing that I was careful to do. This is I knew who my best readers were really going to be, and especially who they were going to be for reading the entire manuscript rather than reading chapters as I went. And I kind of held them in reserve. My wife, Alyssa, is definitely my best reader. I had her read an early draft, and then I didn't have her read anything until I had what was close to the final draft because I wanted her to come at it really fresh. And then I also held back one of my colleagues, a writer named Sarah Layden. She asked me in the hall all the time, "When are you going to show me your book? When are you going to show me your book?" And I said, I don't want you to be someone who's seen 5 drafts and is like longing, mourning the characters who I eliminated and thinking about, I want someone to read it fresh. And so 15 people read my book, gave me all kinds of advice. And, I don't think I could have done it. I know I couldn't have done it without all of the help and the feedback I got. And it really helped to have a mix of people from all over the United States, and then to have a fellow Dodge City person like Tracy to really hold me accountable. So thanks, Tracy.
It certainly makes you question all the things you think you know about your hometown. And it was also kind of cool because Rob and I didn't know each other when we were growing up there, but clearly we knew the same places. Um, it was a fun experience. Let's go ahead and write your questions in the chat, and we'll go through those here at the end so everyone can have a chance. Denise, let's talk about your process.
Yeah, my journey. Because I was working with family material, because this massacre included ancestors on each side, both militia soldier and a native family. I had to go through my family to okay things. And especially with the memoir, I'd done that already. So I knew it's kind of a gauntlet. I don't know if any of you have worked with memoir, but it's very delicate. And even the very last draft after the press had okayed it, I had to go back through for one of my family members and change things. Um, and it's just the compromises. I did have close friends. I did hire a few people to read through the draft. It took me years to put this together as it was kind of concurrent with writing the prose for the memoir. Um, and then it was accepted into the Suntrack series of the University of Arizona Press, and I had known some of those people. So the community, I guess what I'm trying to say is I was always conscious of my community in Kansas, in Northern California, where I live now, and also among indigenous peoples, my writers group, and then the press really did a wonderful job and had a sensitivity editor and a copy editor and a proofreader, and so there was a lot of hands on this manuscript.
Very good. And Jim, we know one of your helpers is right here. Do you want to talk about your community?
Here. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I've known Denise. We've known each other since we were about 19, like
Yeah.
freshmen at KU. And so she's been a very big part of this
No, thank
writing
you.
process for me through the years, and with much gratitude from me. Another person I would mention is named Hal Bennett. And I, my first book I finished writing in 1999, and actually a publisher did pick it up, a New York publisher, and they said, you got to get with an editor, and they gave me his name. And I sent him the manuscript, and I'll never forget, I think his wife tried to talk him out of it. And yet he said, okay, send it. And he went ahead and looked it over. And we got on the phone and he said, well, you got the manuscript in front of you? Turn to page 124, second paragraph, third sentence. And I said, yeah. He said, well, start there. And I said, well, what happens to the other 10 chapters? He said, you know, maybe you can use them as support material for the book. And I said, well, why there? He says, because that's when you start talking to the reader. And he went ahead and worked with me on that book. And it was like a kind of psychotherapy, frankly. It took about 9 months to do that. Anyway, long story short, Hal has been a go-to person in these matters, and he's become a good friend. We had reams of correspondence that went beyond books. And so Hal is a friend, and I take these things to him as well. The 11 Directions of Kansas was ultimately done through his collaborative publishing press, Tenacity Press. And that was a very big, helpful thing that he was able to take that on and was willing. He cut out one of the stories, and um, it was really interesting to hear his reasons for saying this doesn't belong in this. And he had some very good reasons for this. And he's been a source for me for publishing issues ever since, not to mention being a good friend. And yeah, Hal is a So that's at least part of my community. And should mention too, my partner Diane is always a first reader on most everything I write. And this has been very important because of the honesty factor. And yeah, she's been very key to what I select because I can always get it's not an editorial thing so much as just a response, a reaction to the reading. And that seems to be very important to me to see how does this land? And if a person goes, huh, I know I haven't communicated.
Spouses, that's a job they didn't know they were signing up for when they
Mm,
marry a writer, right?
true.
Our last question, and then we will open it all to you all to ask questions, is what advice do you have for an author publishing their first book? This can be tips for final edits, polishing. How do you know when you should stop writing? How do you know when a book is complete? And let's start this one with Denise.
What was the question again?
Um, what advice do you have for an author who's publishing their first book?
Okay. You know, Gather, okay, there are some really good ways to launch a book that expand your readership, especially if you're a poet or even a fiction writer. You can have a big event, make sure there's food, a few, some jug wine or coffee or whatever, and then ask people to come and read one of their poems and one of the poems in your book. Or, short prose or, but get people involved. This has become a real participatory thing. When I started out, I could read, when I had a new book I could read for 50 minutes. I remember being criticized for reading only 45 minutes one time. And and then it has evolved into becoming more of a short reading and at a launch, and then you ask other people, Q&A and so forth. You all know the different formats, but participatory as much as you can, and also developing a readership, sharing your process on social media or in groups or conferences, events, um, staying part of a community and not just always saying, oh, look at me, what I'm writing, being involved with what other people are writing, maybe showing a few pictures of sunsets or your life, not just a narrow piece, not a hard sell. So, those are some things I would suggest, but I'm sure other people have great ideas also.
I'm taking notes.
Okay.
Good advice. Rob, what advice do you have?
I think I have two pieces of advice. I mean, the first piece of advice is that you need to find someone, a publisher, who is passionate and who cares about your work, who loves it. You want to find an editor or a publisher who loves it. Um, Before I published my book with Metal Art Press, I had an offer of publication from a press in New York. I know that's what a lot of people want. And I could just get the feel from this editor that he hadn't even read the whole book. It was COVID. He was looking for a way to fill up his list during that season where he needed to publish something, but it was COVID. I knew that for me to have a book that was successful, I needed to get out and meet readers and tour and give readings and create buzz around the book. And I couldn't do it during COVID. So immediately, even though a lot of people would have thought, oh, it's a New York publisher, I was like, no, this doesn't work for me. This person doesn't care about me, and they don't care about my book. I can tell they didn't finish it. They want to publish it without finishing it. I thought that's terrible. So I went back to the drawing board. I said no. A lot of people in my life said that I had lost my mind. I was crazy. And I was like, no, I'm not crazy. I spent a lot of years working on this book, and I'm not going to take the first offer that comes along. I want a publisher who believes in it, who will allow me years to get to sell the number of copies that I know that I can sell. And then I think that leads me into my second thing, is that I've had several friends who they succeeded in getting their book published, and they were so caught up in the idea that they had to write their next book that they forgot or refused to spend the year to 2 years after a book comes out giving it some oxygen and some ability to breathe, like getting out and meeting readers and getting out and promoting the book. I burned an entire sabbatical 6 months away from teaching, doing nothing but planning a book tour and doing a book tour. And I that's one of the reasons why I have the number of reviews that I have on Amazon, is because I met readers and I kept in contact with them. And if they told me they loved the book, I asked them if they would write a review. So those are my two pieces of advice. First of all, don't settle, don't settle. Get a publisher who believes in you, and don't worry about if it's a big or small publisher. The main thing is they believe in you in the book. And then don't forget, books are for readers. Got to connect with readers. And if you do, you'll get so much more enjoyment out of the experience of having published a book than simply seeing your name on a cover.
Excellent, excellent advice. Ashley, do you have advice for an author publishing their first book?
I do. I would say just to starting is the hardest part. Like just to start it, the one little step because we tell ourselves, oh, I don't have time right now, or oh, I've got this going on, or oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, mate, like for me, I'm like, I'm just a mom and I don't know what I'm doing. So I was really like, should I do this? But I wanted to, and it was fun. So I did. So I would say just even starting and getting to that point of like the beginning and making a move was the hardest part for me. And so just start, just do it. And then another thing I would say is to be patient, which is something I struggle with because there's a lot of factors you don't I never considered when creating a book or self-publishing my own book. There's so many things that go into it. I had no idea. So it's a very big learning curve, and I have learned a ton along the way, and I learned the hard way. Um, so being patient with myself because like you want to get it done, you want to get it out there, you want to get it printed, you want to get it, but you just can't. It takes a very long time to get all the factors in there, and so just be patient with yourself and just start. That's what I would say. It's my advice.
Very good. I think starting is hard. The number of times I've had people come to me and say, I have this wonderful idea for a novel or a story, and one of these days I'm going to write it. And just sit
Exactly.
down, start writing.
Yes.
Jim, what's your advice?
Well, I would really second what Ashley's saying, this thing of just getting started and getting active on it. I call it jumping over my own shadow because it's the ability that you have to approach other people. And I find the publishing world pretty opaque, and it's really seems like an insider game. Um, at the same time, you send out a lot of letters, and sometimes you get something back. And I have a really long list of attempts and failures on that, but you know, I'll keep doing it. You had a couple of other questions in there about when do you stop rewriting and how do you know that something is complete? And I've got one thing that I find myself doing is that if I read something and I read it from the beginning to the end and nothing stops me, I know I've reached something. Other times I'm finding, bang, I'll run into something and it's not quite right, or it doesn't have the right tone, or doesn't add up. And that's an indicator that it's not quite done. But I go back over things from time to time and read it. And if it just reads, that's certainly a place for me. Um, um, that's what I would put into the mix there.
Yes,
Okay.
and does that ever happen the first time?
Well, I go sentence by sentence like that,
Yeah.
and paragraphs. And man, if I make it through a paragraph, um, and it might have been a paragraph I've worked on, and I don't know, I kind of have this thing of inverting paragraphs sometimes and just take the end of it and start there. And when I've got the order of things, they flow.
Yeah.
If I don't have the order, it doesn't flow. It's kind of like I call it writing chiropractic because you're lining up the bones and the energies flow if you've got the right order.
It's a good image.
Dumb analogy.
No,
I do chiropractic on that.
it works for me. Okay, we have Abby.
Yeah, so advice for an author publishing even past their first book. Um, I, again, critique partners, critique groups, I think are just essential. Finding your support system there, finding a way to make your books better, finding people who you can talk to about the industry. Like Jem mentioned, it's just there's so much unknown in the publishing industry that you don't know it until all of a sudden you have to know it and you kind of stumble into it and you make mistakes and then have to fix it. And there's just so many black curtains that you just can't peek behind until you're in it a little bit more. And so part of my advice to do that is critique partners, but then kind of give yourself a bunch of professional development and attend webinars, attend conferences. If you write for kids, SCBWI, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, is amazing. And it's global and they break it into regions. That's a really good one. A lot of times webinars will be free. You don't have to pay for every webinar that comes across. Also, listen to podcasts. I'm a big podcast listener. It is a really simple way for me to kind of get excited about writing again. If I kind of get into a point where I'm like, I haven't written in a couple of days. I don't know how to jump back in. It kind of sparks the fire again. And I actually wrote down a couple podcasts that I really enjoy. Novel marketing podcast, and that's the title, especially if you're self-published and you don't like to market, which most of us don't. So that's a really good one. Writers with Wrinkles is a great one about the industry, about writing itself. Wayward Writers is another one, and they have Kansas ties. And I think that one of them's even an agent, and so you get the agent perspective as well. And then the Publishing Rodeo podcast is another good one. And a lot of these just talk about publishing in general. They talk about craft. They talk about, just opportunities that come up. And it's just a little pick you up, as you're going through, because writing takes a while and there's lots of hoops you have to jump through. And so it's just it's just good information, and you learn things that you didn't know before. So
Excellent. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left here. And we do have some questions in the chat. I'm sure people have questions they'd like to just ask in person. I'll just kind of run through these and we'll let you all raise a hand. Does anyone want to talk about how you find your beta readers? How do you find people interested in reading your work?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Denise.
the thing about the writing industry is it's changing all the time. I mean, it's podcasts and it's Substack and it's threads and so many other things. But the thing that I have found really helping me develop a new kind of beta community, if you want to call it, is being on Zoom open mics. And for both prose and poetry and in person, the open mic scene is where you can just go share, find out what's going on. And I always have wanted to have roots in wherever I live. And so I have dug into the places where I have and like basically the Zoom, the COVID gave us Zoom, and it's really a gift because it transcends geography, like here we are right now.
It's true. Aaron had asked, this is for anyone on the panel, how do you keep your energy and motivation up to write when life happens and you hit rough spots?
Wine.
Wine. Okay, I'm taking notes. Go get the wine in.
I mean, like I mentioned, podcasts, just tying myself into the publishing world when I can. And sometimes I take a break. Right now, I just finished the third manuscript for this trilogy. I just finished it a couple weeks ago, and drafting is the hardest thing for me. And so I've been drafting for like 2, 3 years straight. So I'm taking a break. I am stepping back for like 2 months before I start my next book. And I'm working on the marketing of book two and other things, but I'm giving myself a little break, especially when you have holidays. You know, my book, the third book, was due at the end of the year, which was insane with Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's. It was a lot. And so, yeah, just stepping back when you need to. And then that community, that support system kind of helps bring you back in, because you still have people asking you, well, what's your next book? What are you writing? What are you doing? When's the next one coming out? And so it kind of keeps you motivated, keeps you going. And then writing about something that you're excited about. So my next one is food focused, and I love food and cooking and finding recipes. And so I'm really excited to jump into that. So it kind of gives you that extra motivation to get back into your manuscript.
We have a question here about agents. Do any of you work with an agent, or have you?
I've had an agent for more than 20 years, and she's never sold a single book of mine. I sold all myself. But I do think that if your goal is to get your book in front of New York publishers, it's the only way. It's the only way. And so the process of trying to find an agent is the same thing as trying to find a publisher. You're just starting a whole step earlier. And I talked to an agent, a couple of young agents who told me why they didn't want to represent me when I was thinking about getting a different agent than the one who's never placed a single book of mine. And they told me an interesting thing. They said, I'm at the beginning of my career as an agent. I'm really looking for writers that are kind of my age so that we can go through the whole career together. And I thought that was good. I thought that was good advice. So I think if you want to publish in New York, you got to get an agent. But if that's not the goal, or if you're open to other things, you may not need one.
Yeah, if you're looking for an agent, I kind of saw you were talking about in that question, it was, I think, mystery was the genre. You can always look at manuscriptwishlist.com. That's where a bunch of agents list the kind of manuscripts they want to find, they want to represent. Just looking up agencies and seeing what their agents want. That's after I finish this food focused book, that's what I'm going to dive into and start sending stuff out to agents. Because Rob's right. If you want a larger publisher, you have to go through an agent. So.
Okay. It looks like she said manuscriptwishlist.com. That's a good one. It looks, some of you have been answering in the chat. So we just have a few minutes left. Does anybody have a question they'd just like to ask out loud? I don't see any hands. Well, I always enjoy, this is one of my favorite presentations of the year, just because I like to listen to authors talk about their process and their books. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for coming. This is a great group today. This is great turnout. If those from Wichita, those meeting in groups, please put in the comments for me how many are with you, just so I can kind of keep track of what we've got going here. I have just a few announcements I'm going to make, and then I'm going to turn it over to the break room, or the breakout rooms, and you guys who are meeting in groups can take your second hour from here. Announcements. So this is your reminder that we are taking entries for the 2026 Book Awards right now. Eligible books have a publication date of 2025. Books that have been republished are not eligible. This is an original publication date. So your deadline for getting those books to us is March 1st. And remember, this is earlier than in years past. Be sure and look at the website for guidelines. Pass the news on to your fellow writers. There's no fee for entry, but you must be a Kansas Authors Club member. So I guess there is kind of a fee, $35 if you want to enter. We hope you're a member all the time. In other news, the 2026 Convention Committee met and we have a theme. It's writing our history and creating our future, building community right. And that's RIGHT at the end. The convention will take place October 2nd through 4th at Rock Springs Ranch. And there will be a bonus add-on day for Thursday for those who want to come and just spend a day writing and enjoying the beautiful campus of Rock Springs. So be sure and put that on your calendar and watch for more news. And finally, our next program is February 21st at 1:30 p.m. Our presenter is former poet laureate of Kansas, Kevin Rabus. And this is not on the website yet, but his topic is writing letters and using the letter form in your creative work. This session will explore how to use letters and emails and posts and texts, not only as their own creative art form, but as material and fuel for more formal creative work. We will also explore the epistolary, the letter form as structure in the poem, the narrative, fiction or nonfiction, as well as other genres and mediums, including film. So that should be a fantastic presentation. And if you know Kevin, he is every writer's cheerleader. We're really pleased to have him presenting this year. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to stop the recording now.